Hey everyone, and big shout out to you Vintage Car Chronicles listeners.
Mm.
We're going deep today, a deep dive into, well, an icon really, the Mazda MX-5. You know it as the Miata.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys, you sent us an amazing, just a ton of material, articles, specs, personal stories, I mean everything. So clearly this little Roadster, it's got a special place in a lot of hearts.
It really does.
We're going to try to figure out why.
I mean, it's remarkable how much there is out there about this one car. It really speaks to, how much it's resonated with people over the years. I mean, we've got technical stuff, engineering stuff, personal stories.
Yeah.
It runs the gamut.
Well, and one of the things that really jumped out at me, I was looking at all the stuff you guys sent in.
Oh.
Did you know it almost wasn't front engine, rear wheel drive? It almost was mid-engined.
Wow.
Can you imagine? Like, that's crazy.
That would have been a completely different car.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then another thing, first generation, they were looking at Alfa Romeo engines for inspiration.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, can you imagine it being called the Unos Roadster, which is what they called it in Japan?
It just doesn't have that same ring to it, does it?
No, I think they made the right choice.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we're going to unpack all of this. We're going to get into those little details, the fascinating stuff, and maybe have a few aha moments along the way.
I always love those.
Me too. All right, so let's rewind the clock way back to the late 1970s. Picture this. We got an American journalist, Bob Hall. He's test driving a Mazda RX-7. Now, Bob, huge fan of classic English roadsters. The thing is, he was kind of bummed out because they were fading away.
Yeah, that makes sense. That was a time when, all these new safety regulations, emissions regulations, all that was coming in. A lot of those small, lightweight, sporty cars, they just couldn't cut it anymore.
Yeah. So Bob gets this idea while he's driving this RX-7, and he pitches it to Kenichi Yamamoto, who's a Mazda engineer. He says, hey, let's make a modern roadster. Let's blend that British charm with that Japanese reliability that was, really coming on strong at that time.
Wow, that's pretty forward-thinking, really. What a great idea.
Yeah, right. I mean, and it's interesting because Bob wasn't just some journalist with a passing fancy. He really knew roadsters.
Yeah.
Like, he understood what made them tick.
Yeah.
And Mazda, they were listening because a couple of years later, they actually bring Bob on board as part of the design team.
Wow.
Yeah. And that roadster idea, it was still there. It hadn't gone away. So he gets this team together in California, and their mission, capture the essence of the perfect roadster.
This is where it gets really interesting because they didn't just sit around in a room, right? They went out and they bought every roadster they could get their hands on.
I can imagine.
They drove them, lived with them. They even took them apart. I mean, talk about dedication.
Talk about doing your research.
Yeah.
I mean, their garage must have been, like, incredible.
Roadster heaven.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing, that hands-on approach, that focus on experience, like really feeling what a roadster was all about, it became kind of a hallmark of the MX-5's development.
I mean, it makes sense. It's not just numbers on a page, right? It's a feeling. And they looked at some pretty cool stuff for inspiration, Like you said, Alfa Romeo engines. If you look at the MX-5, you can actually see little bits of, like, Lotus Elan, Triumph Spitfire, like, stylistically.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Now, fast forward to 1989. The MX-5 makes its debut at the Chicago Auto Show.
The rest is history.
Pretty much. Remember how we said it almost was mid-engine?
Yeah.
Thank goodness they stuck with front-engine rear-wheel drive.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what gives it that perfect balance, the weight distribution. That's what makes it so nimble, so fun to drive.
Yeah. And the world, they fell in love. This little roadster, round lines, those iconic pop-up headlights. I mean, it was an instant hit.
And I think it came at a time when people were really looking for something like that, something simple, something fun, something that wasn't going to break the bank. There were all these more complicated, expensive cars coming out, and this was just a breath of fresh air.
Totally. And remember that Japanese reliability we were talking about? It delivered.
Yeah.
This wasn't just a pretty face. This thing was built to last.
Yeah.
And they didn't skimp on the interior either.
Yeah.
I mean, for the time, pretty well equipped.
They knew even a sports car, you've got to be able to live with it every day.
Right. And it was all about that lightweight, that agility. It wasn't about horsepower. It was about feeling connected to the road.
Yeah.
And that soft top, so simple, so easy to use, perfect for those sunny days.
The best days.
Right.
A lot of people credit the MX-5 with really bringing back the Roadster. It was accessible, it was fun, and it wasn't going to leave you stranded on the side of the road like some of those, more temperamental European cars.
Right, right. And speaking of accessible, that price tag, I mean, $14,000 in the U.S.
Unheard of.
I know. It was a game changer. It made owning a Roadster a reality for a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
And under the hood, it had that reliable little 1.6-liter engine straight out of the Mazda 323.
Not a powerhouse, but it was perfect for the car. It was rev happy, it was fun to drive, and it was as dependable as they come.
It did the job. But the story doesn't end there. In 1998, Mazda, they released the second-generation MX-5, the NB. And I think some people, they were a little hesitant at first.
Yeah, I can understand that. You know, you've got this iconic car and then they come out with a new one and it looks pretty similar. How do you make it better without messing with what people loved about the original?
It's a tough line to walk.
It is.
But the NB, it wasn't about radical change. It was about refining what worked. So the lines, they were still rounded, but a little more curvy this time. And those pop-up headlights,
Yeah.
gone.
Oh, no.
Fixed headlights instead. It was kind of a sign of the times. Safety regulations were getting stricter.
Yeah. I mean, it gave the NB a slightly more grown-up look, I think, but it still kept that spirit of the original.
It did. And practically speaking, they made the trunk a little bit bigger. Always a plus in a Roadster.
Always.
Yeah.
Every little bit helps. It's all about making that car livable, right?
Right. And performance-wise, well, they tightened up the handling. They made the interior even more driver-focused. Even bumped up the power on that 1.6-liter engine, 110 horsepower now. Plus, power steering, dual airbags, they made it standard.
Again, it's about that balance, right? Making it fun, but also functional. It's not just about numbers on a spec sheet. It's about creating a whole experience.
Right. And the price in Europe, still really good, like 16,000, 17,000 euros. It meant that a lot of people could still afford it. And that's what I think made the MB so appealing. It could, handle those twisty back roads. But it was also comfortable enough for a long road trip.
The best of both worlds. Jack of all trades. No wonder it kept winning over people with each new generation.
Right. Now get ready for a bit of a design shift.
Yep.
2005 rolls around. Mazda unveils the third-generation MX-5, the NC. This one, a little more aggressive, more angular, more prominent hood. It definitely had a presence.
It was a bold move, but I think they pulled it off. It still had that MX-5 essence, They evolved the look without losing the heart of the car.
They did. It did get a little bit bigger, but it didn't lose its agility.
Yeah.
But the really big news with the NC, the hardtop convertible option.
Ooh. Yeah, the Roadster Coupe.
I know. And it wasn't just any hardtop. This thing retracted, folded right into the trunk.
It's incredible how they did that. I mean, the whole mechanism only added like 80 pounds to the car.
It's amazing.
It's a testament to their engineering. They really didn't want to compromise that lightweight feel.
Yeah. And when you see that roof disappear, it's like magic. And with the roof up, the NC, it was like a sleek coupe. It was like having two cars in one.
Totally.
Engine-wise, you had a couple choices. A 1.8-liter with 126 horsepower or a 2.0-liter with a 160. But here's the thing. A lot of people, they actually preferred the smaller engine.
Interesting.
I know. But it made sense because in the NC, it felt more balanced. The 1.8-liter didn't overpower the chassis, and it really let that playful, responsive character shine through. Sometimes less is more, right?
Absolutely. Sometimes you don't need brute force. You just need that perfect harmony between the car and the driver.
Okay, now we're going to jump ahead to 2015. The fourth generation MX-5 arrives, the ND. And with this one, they went back to basics. Smaller, lighter, all about that driver engagement. It was like a love letter to the original.
And what a beautiful love letter it was. It's arguably the best-looking MX-5 yet. They managed to keep that modern feel while still giving a nod to the classic Roadster look.
And inside, they really stepped it up. Soft touch materials, more premium feel, and they added some really cool touches like speakers in the headrests.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And that soft top. So easy to use, you can practically do it with one hand.
That's impressive.
It is. And they finally gave taller drivers some decent legroom and headroom.
That's always a plus. It makes a big difference on those longer drives.
It really does. But let's talk about how this thing drives, because in the city, it's like a four-wheeled scooter. So nimble, so darty, it just zips through traffic.
And out on those winding roads,
oh, forget about it.
You've got to be a dream.
Pure joy. The steering is sharp. The suspension is perfect. It just begs you to push it harder. And you've got a couple of engine choices. A 1.5-liter, 131 horsepower, great for fuel efficiency and a more relaxed driving experience. But if you want to unleash the ND's full potential, go for the 2.0-liter, 184 horsepower.
Oh, yeah, that's the one. That engine just sings when you rev it out. It's perfect for a lightweight sports car.
It's the perfect match. And now for the really interesting part. Remember the Roadster Coupe from
Yeah.
the NC?
Yeah.
Well, they took that concept and they turned it up to 11 with the ND.
What did they do?
The RF,
The RF.
retractable fastback.
Oh, yeah.
And that roof mechanism, it's inspired by the Ferrari California. It's a work of art. It transforms the MX-5 from this sleek coupe to a roadster in seconds.
It's got to be stunning to watch. And with the roof up, I bet it's quiet, refined, like a completely different car.
Yeah, it's impressive.
I can't believe they keep pushing the boundaries like this. It would be so easy just to, stick with what works, but they keep refining it, making it better with each generation.
Right. They didn't just slap a hard top on the ND and call it a day. They gave it its own suspension tuning, structural reinforcements, all to make sure it handled just as well as the soft top version. They even added this special bracing system to stiffen up the chassis, which improves something called torsional rigidity. Basically, it means the car resists twisting forces better.
Wow, so they really went all out to make sure the RF drove like a true MX-5.
Yeah, they weren't messing around. The RF is a testament to how much Mazda cares about this car. They're always trying to make it better, push the envelope, and they do it without losing sight of what makes it special, that pure joy of driving.
And speaking of, it's fascinating to think that the MX-5 was so successful that it actually inspired other car makers to create their own roadsters.
Really? I knew it was popular, but I didn't know it was influential. What cars are we talking about?
Well, I think one of the most obvious examples is the Toyota MR2 Spider. That was kind of Toyota's answer to the MX-5. It was mid-engine, so a little different in that way, and maybe focused a bit more on performance, but it definitely took some cues from what Mazda was doing. It showed that there was a market for these fun, affordable roadsters.
Yeah, you know what they say, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
That's right. And it wasn't just Toyota. BMW, they got in on the action with the Z3. Now, that one was a little more luxurious, more of a grand tour kind of car, but it still had that open-air driving experience, and it was, relatively speaking, affordable.
So the MX-5, it wasn't just a hit, it was a trendsetter. It helped change the automotive world.
Exactly. And its influence, you can still see it today. Look at the Fiat 124 Spider.
Oh, yeah.
That car is actually built on the same platform as the current MX-5. Mazda and Fiat, they collaborated on it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And while the 124 Spider, it has its own Italian flair, it's got that MX-5 DNA in there, it shows that the MX-5's legacy goes beyond just how many they've sold. It's inspired a whole generation of cars.
That's amazing. I never realized that.
And, it's not just the cars themselves. The MX-5 has created this amazing community of enthusiasts all over the world. You've got MX-5 clubs everywhere, people who share this love for the car and the driving experience it offers.
It's true.
Yeah.
That's something I love about car culture in general. It brings people together from all walks of life. You see it at car shows, track days, even just cruising around town. And the MX-5, it seems like it has a particularly strong following.
I think it's because it has such a strong personality.
Yeah.
It makes people feel something when they drive it. It creates a sense of belonging. It's not just a car, it's a lifestyle.
It really is. It's about the experiences you have behind the wheel, the memories, the friendships. And the MX-5, with its focus on just pure driving enjoyment, it's the perfect car for that.
It reminds us that driving can be more than just a chore. It can be an adventure, it can be a source of joy, it can be a way to celebrate life. And I think on that note, it's time for us to take a little break.
Yeah, let's pause here for a second. Let all this MX-5 goodness sink in. When we come back, we'll dive even deeper. We'll look at its impact on motorsport, and we'll discuss what the future might hold for this little roadster in an age of, electric cars and self-driving cars. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everybody. Before the break, we were talking about, the MX-5's evolution, how it went from this kind of little idea to this global phenomenon. And one of the, I think, really pivotal moments was the introduction of the hardtop.
Oh, the hardtop.
Yeah.
I remember when the NC came out with that Roadster Coupe option. It was like, wait a minute, a Miata with a real roof.
Yeah.
How does that even work? It felt kind of, I don't know, revolutionary at the time.
It was a big step for Mazda. Roadsters, they're all about that open-air experience, the wind in your hair, the sun on your face.
Right.
But the hardtop, it opened up a whole new world, didn't it?
It did. It suddenly made the MX-5 practical, like a real daily driver. Yeah. Especially for those of us who don't live in places where it's sunny all the time.
Right. Try driving a regular Roadster in the winter with just that little soft top.
Yeah, no thanks.
The hardtop made the MX-5 so much more versatile. You could have your fun in the sun when you wanted it, but then when the weather turned bad, you could just button up and stay cozy.
And let's not forget about security. Having a hardtop, It's definitely a deterrent for anyone looking for an easy target. You could actually park your MX-5 with the top down and not worry about it so much.
That's a good point. Peace of mind.
Yeah.
But Mazda, they didn't just create any old hardtop.
Mm.
They knew the MX-5 had this reputation for being nimble, for having that connected driving experience, and they didn't want to mess that up with some big clunky roof mechanism.
And they didn't. That retractable hardtop on the NC, it was a masterpiece. So lightweight, so compact, folded away neatly into the trunk, didn't take up any space.
It's like watching a magic trick when that roof disappears.
It really is.
And when it's up, the whole car, it just transforms. It looks so sleek, so sophisticated. It's like two cars in one.
I think the hardtop really brought in a lot of new buyers,
Yeah.
people who might not have considered a Roadster before. They like the idea of a convertible, but maybe they weren't so sure about a traditional soft top.
It makes sense. It broadened the appeal without alienating the diehard fans.
Exactly.
Smart move by Mazda. And speaking of expanding on a good idea, let's talk about the ND, the fourth generation.
Yeah.
Remember the RF, the retractable fastback?
Ooh, the RF.
That was Mazda taking the whole hardtop concept to like an art form.
It is a beautiful car. That roof mechanism, inspired by the Ferrari California, so elegant, so precise. It's like watching a perfectly choreographed dance when it goes from coupe to Roadster and back.
And the lines, the way they flow, create that fastback silhouette when the roof is up, it's just gorgeous. It's like they took the best of a coupe and combined it with the freedom of a Roadster.
And again, they didn't just focus on looks. They gave it special suspension tuning, structural reinforcements, all to make sure it handled just as well as the soft top version.
They even added that bracing system to increase the torsional rigidity.
Right.
Which, for people who don't speak engineer, means they made the body more resistant to twisting, which
Yeah.
makes the handling even sharper. The car feels even more connected to the road.
They were serious about making the RF a true MX-5, not just a stylish hardtop. I think it's the ultimate combination of open-air thrills and refined driving dynamics.
Absolutely. And, speaking of driving dynamics, I think we should talk about the MX-5's impact on motorsport. People might be surprised to learn that this little roadster, it actually has a pretty serious racing pedigree.
Oh yeah, the MX-5 isn't just for cruising. It can hold its own on a track.
It's that combination of lightweight agility and balanced handling. It makes it a blast to push to the limit. And the fact that it's relatively affordable, that's opened up racing to a whole bunch of people. From casual enthusiasts to professional teams, you've got entire racing series dedicated to the MX-5.
I know, it's like a giant family track day.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, the things that Mazda learns from racing, they actually use them to make the road cars better.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a win-win. Racing makes the road cars better, and the road cars inspire people to go racing. It's this great cycle of passion and innovation.
I love that.
And the MX-5's influence doesn't stop there. You've got this whole aftermarket scene, a playground for people who want to personalize their cars, take the performance even further.
It's like a giant Lego set for car enthusiasts. You start with a stock MX-5, and then you can turn it into, whatever you want it to be. It's no wonder there are so many MX-5 communities online, forums where people share their builds, exchange ideas.
It's amazing. It's like this car, it sparks creativity, it brings people together. The MX-5, it's more than just a car. It's a platform for self-expression, for shared passion.
It's a car that encourages you to get your hands dirty, to tinker, to experiment, to make it your own. And in a world where cars are becoming more and more, homogenized, all looking the same, all having the same features, that sense of individuality, it's more important than ever.
I agree. It's a reminder that cars can be more than just appliances, They can be sources of joy, creativity, connection. And the MX-5, with its simple but brilliant design, it captures that spirit perfectly.
It does. It's a car that makes you want to slow down, enjoy the drive, feel the connection to the road. And not a lot of modern cars can do that.
That's true. But, as much as we're celebrating the MX-5, we can't ignore the fact that the future of cars is, it's changing fast. Electrification, autonomous driving, all that's coming. And it makes you wonder, what does that mean for a car like the MX-5? A car that's so focused on the pure joy of driving.
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah. But I have faith in Mazda. They get what the MX-5 is all about. And I think they'll find a way to adapt, to evolve, but without losing that core spirit.
I hope so. The world needs cars like the MX-5, cars that remind us that driving can be an experience, not just a way to get around.
Well said. I think it's time for another quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive into the world of MX-5 special editions, all those unique variations that have captured the hearts of enthusiasts over the years. And we'll talk about the future, speculate on what might be next for this beloved little roadster. Stay tuned.
All right, Vintage Car Chronicles listeners, welcome back to our MX-5 deep dive. We've gone through the history, the evolution, and now for the fun stuff.
Let's talk about those special editions, the ones that, get collectors excited, make enthusiasts drool a little bit.
Oh yeah, the special editions. They're like these little snapshots of the MX-5's personality. Each one highlights something different, something special. Mazda's really good at capturing a theme and turning it into a car that feels, unique and authentic.
Like that 1991 British Racing Green Special Edition.
Oh yeah, I mean, it wasn't just a paint job, right? It was like a nod to the MX-5's heritage, a tribute to those classic British roadsters that inspired the whole thing.
Imagine driving that first-generation MX-5, that deep, elegant British racing green. The smell of that tan leather interior, it perfectly captured that blend of classic style and modern performance.
And Mazda must have known they were onto something, because they brought back British Racing Green for a bunch of other special editions over years.
They did.
There was a really nice one for the second-generation MX-5 back in 2001. It's a color that just seems to fit the MX-5's personality, doesn't it?
It really does. It's timeless. Speaking of celebrating milestones, we got to talk about the 10th anniversary edition from 1999.
Oh, yeah.
That was a true celebration of the MX-5 success. All the special features, it really felt like a special occasion.
That sapphire blue mica paint.
Stunning.
Oh, it was beautiful. And those polished wheels, the body kit.
And inside, you had that two-tone blue and black color scheme, 6-speed manual transmission,
Nice.
a Bose sound system. Even the door sill plates were stainless steel with the 10th anniversary logo.
They really went all out. It was a fitting tribute to a car that had already become a legend.
But if you're talking about a special edition that really pushed the performance envelope, you got to talk about the 2004 Mazda Speed MX-5.
Oh, the Mazda Speed. Now, that was a pocket rocket.
The first and only factory turbocharged MX-5. A real wolf in sheep's clothing.
178 horsepower, turbocharged engine, limited slip differential, upgraded suspension.
And those racing heart wheels.
Oh, yeah. This thing was a blast to drive. It showed that the MX-5 platform, it could handle serious power without losing its composure.
And they're pretty rare these days, which makes them even more desirable for collectors.
Of course. But the special editions, they didn't stop with the earlier generations. Mazda kept releasing unique versions for the NC and the ND, each one with its own, personality, its own appeal.
Like the 25th anniversary edition for the NC, that soul red metallic paint.
Beautiful.
And those almond leather seats. It was elegant, sporty, all at the same time.
And for the ND, we got the 30th anniversary edition.
Oh, yeah.
That racing orange paint.
Yeah.
Wow.
Head turner for sure.
And a bunch of performance upgrades. I mean, it was the most powerful MX-5 to date.
Mazda really gets it. They understand how much the MX-5 means to people, and they keep finding new ways to celebrate it.
Which brings us to an interesting question. What's next for the MX-5? We're moving towards electric cars, self-driving cars. What happens to a car that's all about the pure joy of driving?
That's a good question. It's hard to say what the future holds, but I think Mazda's got this. They've shown that they respect the MX-5's heritage, its character. They understand what makes it so special.
I think so, too.
So maybe we'll see a fully electric MX-5, silent, but with that instant torque. Or maybe a hybrid, the best of both worlds. Who knows? Maybe they'll surprise us with a hydrogen-powered MX-5.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
But I don't think Mazda will just give up on the MX-5. They put too much into it,
Right.
and it represents something really important. It's a reminder that driving can be more than just getting from point A to point B.
Right.
It can be about joy, freedom, connection. As long as there are people who want that, I think the MX-5 will have a place in the world no matter what form it takes.
I think you're right.
Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the Mazda MX-5. From its humble beginnings to where it is today, an icon.
We've covered a lot. Design, technology, special editions, even what the future might hold. It's been a blast.
It has. Big thanks to all you Vintage Car Chronicles listeners for joining us on this journey. Hope you learned a thing or two about this little roadster and its impact on the car world.
And don't forget, there's a new episode of Vintage Car Chronicles waiting for you every day on Spotify, all about cars, the stories, the passion, all that good stuff.
So stay tuned, keep those engines revving, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive. Until then, Happy driving.
And keep the wind in your hair.